Always been so curious about this. Story 1. It's masculine jewelry. It's really that simple. Men have very few avenues for expression through fashion accessories, and some of them choose to do so via watches. Story 2. I wear a nice analog watch because my wife gave it to me as a birthday gift. It looks nice, and I use it to check the time since it's faster than pulling out my phone. I also use it for work since I need to count seconds sometimes. Story 3. My grandfather was decked out in a $3,000 ring on just about each finger throughout his life. He wore a Rolex and sported a thin gold chain when I was a kid. In the end, each of my cousins and I got one of his rings as a remembrance in his will after he passed. It's more superficial these days, but there is more sentimental reasoning behind it, just like my grandfather, I guess. Everyone has their own ways of expressing themselves in life. Don't knock it. Story 4. I like that it's functional jewelry. Will a $20 Casio Duro tell the time just as accurately, if not more so, than a $6,000 Omega Speedmaster? Yes. But is it as pretty? No. Quartz watches are cheaper than automatics or manual, but we love them because they are gorgeous and respect the art of designing and building a good watch. They are art that you can wear. Story 5. As many here have stated, it's jewelry, functional jewelry. Men can't accessorize like women, so it's one of the few pieces of jewelry men can wear. For me, I do use my mechanical timepieces for time. I always have my phone on me, but I always look at my watch to check the time and the date. It's just ingrained in me since I've been wearing watches since before I was 10 years old. They also serve other functions. For instance, depending on the watch I'm wearing, I'll use the bezel or the chronograph for timing. A Breitling Navitimer, for example, can perform division and multiplication functions, and it's purely mechanical. For me, watchmaking is also an art. With today's technological advancements, something purely mechanical just has charm. I also adore my watches because there are memories associated with them. A watch can accompany you anywhere while you do anything. Something that, say, a fancy car can't do. Nothing against those who own or collect fancy cars. They have their charm too. So I like that. Some of my pieces have been to many countries with me. Others were on my wrist while my children were being born, or when I got married. The fact that these memories are tied to them means a lot to me. My first mechanical timepiece ran 5 years without stopping, as it was the only watch I had back then. Imagine something being alive, ticking, for 5 years without a battery or electricity. Because of this specific reason, I would never get rid of this watch. A watch can also last generations if taken care of properly and serviced at the right intervals. This is another reason I'm enamored with them. My grandkids may wear the timepieces I currently possess. For these reasons, I cherish the pieces I own and hope to keep adding more. Story 6. It's primarily a status symbol for those who understand its value and move in circles where other people also understand its value. Since it is also a thing of beauty with ornate decorations and intricate mechanics, it serves the same function as jewelry for men who know and have it, and as a cause for envy for the men who know but don't have it. I have an old Raymond while that serves as my travel watch, but since it looks a little like the Cartier tank, people who like but don't really know watches sometimes mistake it for that. People who know watches, however, can immediately tell it's not the tank. Incidentally, I get more compliments on my Raymond while than on my tank, unless I move in the right circles. Oh, and I almost never use the watch to check the time anymore. Not since the advent of smartphones. Story 7. For men who conform to traditional fashion standards, there aren't a lot of options for ornamentation and expression. Fancy watches are jewelry for men, jewelry which social conservatives won't notice. In some more liberal, loose places like California, it's pretty normal to see men with earrings, colorful clothes, and outfits that aren't three-piece suits, but in other places you will seriously be denied employment if you break the rules for men's appearance. I've had to switch my ear gauges out for pink silicone to disguise my inappropriate ear piercings for jobs in the past. In that type of environment, a watch would be the only way for me to wear something flashy without being written up by my boss. Story 8. I use mine to check the time, and often use other features as needed, such as the date, Greenwich Mean Time, and chronograph. It's less about status to me than just having an accessory I enjoy. Many of the expensive watches I own are from brands unknown to the mainstream, so they're not really giving me any status, and watches in general don't give anyone status. If I've met my savings goals, like retirement, individual retirement account, after tax, and kids' college, why not own something nice and fun for myself? Story 9. I'm wearing a Patek Philippe Calatrava right now. What motivates me? The same reason I drive a nice car and have my sport coats tailored. It's comfortable and it looks good. To an extent, it's a status symbol, though I would argue that the only people who really pay attention to luxury watches are other luxury watch owners. Are they actually used to check the time? Yeah, just like any other watch. Story 10. Okay, for me, yes, it is functional jewelry. However, I am fascinated with the mechanics of a fine watch. More than anything, that is why I wear them. They keep great time, and I love the fact that it is not dependent on anything but winding or just moving to run for a decade before it needs to be serviced. My daily wear watch is a Tissot. I have Omega, Tag Heuer, and several other brands that would be considered luxury. They can be very expensive or extremely affordable, but regardless, a good watch is always something to be proud of owning. Story 11. Shannon Sharp said, "You wear your watch to tell time. I wear my watch to tell you how valuable my time is." While I think that's true for some, and it's a great soundbite, I think there are a lot who wear an expensive watch to make people think their time is valuable. For most, I'm going to guess that it's a nice bit of jewelry and status. Story 12. I've often heard that men will purchase particularly expensive watches after a good year in business or some other extraordinary financial gain. It's a trophy and reminder of what they've accomplished, which is why, in some cases, they are such a personal and cherished possession. Story 13. I have a few nice-looking, but inexpensive, around $150, watches. My daily driver is a $50 Timex that keeps good time, and if it were broken at work or stolen, I would rebuy the exact model. Cheap and functional. I've been wearing a wristwatch for 50 years. It's a muscle memory habit to check my wrist for the time. Story 14. It's the only jewelry men are allowed to wear, with possible exceptions for a signet ring if you went to Oxford or Cambridge, or a chain if you're from New Jersey. It's nice to have nice stuff. Bonus points for function and the amazing engineering that goes into some of them. Story 15. Lots of people, men and women, wear expensive watches in my field, aviation. In some ways, dressing nicely and wearing things like fancy watches make you look put together and credible. If I didn't wear a Garmin running watch, I suppose I'd wear something that at least looks nice and complements my style. It doesn't have to be expensive. Story 16. Why do women wear expensive jewelry? Why do people wear expensive clothes, shoes, or sunglasses? Why would someone have expensive cars, motorbikes, household items, or hobby items like expensive guitars? It's called having something nice. Story 17. It depends on the collector, but it's mostly a status thing, just like any luxury good. Similar to how some women like expensive bags despite them serving the same function as a bag for a fraction of the cost. The other argument is that it's about craftsmanship. The highest-end watches are quite complicated to make and are a testament to both art and engineering. Some people do care about that and can admire it. Story 18. It is usually a fashion thing more than anything. Sometimes it is a status thing to show off that they have money. For me, I just like watches and think they are cool and utilitarian. It is great that smartphones do everything for us, but I really like things that keep me from checking my phone, like my watch. Story 19. Because some people like watches, some people like cars, some like traveling, and some people like beer. All I can say is don't disparage someone because they like something different than you. Buy what makes you happy. But also be happy for them if they're happy. It's not that hard. Story 20. Could be a status symbol or maybe a matter of keeping up appearances. Some people just like nice watches and prioritize them over things that other people would find more important. Story 21. Same reason women wear jewelry. Personally, I haven't worn a watch for years until I got a Fossil smartwatch. Otherwise, I would just check my phone for the time. Story 22. It's been a while, but I once read that on first meeting a man, women will look at his shoes and his watch as an indicator of date worthiness. That may have changed. Story 23. Recently, I just purchased my first expensive watch. It was around $1,700, and it is absolutely just an accessory for me when I go somewhere nice and have certain clothes on. Sure, I use it for its actual purpose, but it's more of a flashy thing. Story 24. I like watches, and it's actually somewhat useful for my career. I work in medicine and need to take pulses. Having a clock always available is helpful for this. Story 25. I have two good watches for water activities and outdoors. I have one simpler dress watch and one smartwatch as well. I buy what catches my eye and suits my needs, but can't say I ever bought a watch just to be flashy. I know lots of guys that do, though. Can't say I've ever been in a situation where a $10,000 Rolex was more useful than my Nautilus dive watch or even my Galaxy Watch 5, so they aren't for me. Story 26. The history and craftsmanship of a beautiful timepiece. That's what does it for me. It's the same with most nice things like that. Cars, shoes, suits, and so on. For me at least. Story 27. I like looking at my watch and not being reminded that I have 1,295 emails, texts, calendar reminders, and random notifications here. To be fair, I stole this from a Timex advertisement. Story 28. Well, I don't know if a watch under $200 counts as expensive or not, but it certainly took a chunk out of my money. Anyway, I've loved wristwatches ever since I was a child. A few months ago, I began to be fascinated by mechanical watches after stumbling onto watch-related YouTube videos. I found I really liked field watches and ended up buying a Seiko 5 field watch. I will say, I don't always want to have to take my phone out of my pocket to tell the time when I can just raise my wrist. In summary, I'm fascinated by mechanical watches and still use my wristwatch as a tool. Story 29. I have a few hobbies. Collecting hobbies. I write a daily journal, so I have a collection of about 100 fountain pens. Some are kind of expensive. I also collect men's fragrances. I have about 120 bottles. Some are expensive. But I also have 20 watches, mostly expensive like Rolex, Tissot, or Tag Heuer. I like to dress up and show off on evenings out. Story 30. Timex versus Rolex? I'll go with the Timex. My tastes change over time. Why would I want an old Rolex lying in a drawer because it looks old? I've got to be practical about this. I do not need to impress anyone other than myself. Story 31. Are they actually used to check the time? Yes. What motivates men primarily to buy and wear expensive watches? Some of it is just tradition. I grew up around men who had a good quality watch they would wear every day and a more expensive watch for special occasions. Some of it is because it's something I look at several times a day, and I want something I enjoy looking at. I rarely run in circles anymore where anyone cares if I'm wearing a Rolex or a Casio. These days, a smartwatch has replaced my Casio, though I do have a face that's similar to my Bulova on it. Sometimes I wear a watch just because that's what I want to see today. Sometimes it's to match my outfit or the event I'm going to. Sometimes it's just plain sentimental. My Rolex was my grandfather's. I bought my Bulova the day I met my now wife. I like to remember that day, and it does just that. Story 32. For me, it's society creep. Unless you're a hobbyist to some degree, depending on what field you work in, if you want to play the part, you need to keep up and look good, and that includes accessorizing. I'm not a fan of it, but the business card scene from American Psycho is kind of funny to me, and I think about it whenever people show off their overly expensive items. There's always a degree of participation depending on the crowd you're with, and that will usually come with a desire to make it bigger and better. Some people carry that with them every day. Respect either way. I love fancy watches. Story 33. Some guys just like watches. I always thought the engineering was cool, and sure, it's a fashion piece. I would accessorize a bit between 2 to 3 watches and a few bands for each. I will say that it was more of a Generation X and Baby Boomer thing than a Millennial and Generation Z thing. Even the millennials I know who like watches and have the cash are mostly using one or more frequently updated and well-accessorized Apple watches over your $1,000 to $2,000 and even $5,000 to $10,000 watches. I knew a guy who was a big Breitling, Omega, and higher-end Seiko fan 6 to 7 years ago. He kind of just let it go over time. He still has them, I think, just never really wears them. I was a big Seiko guy myself, Japanese market mid-range stuff. All of mine are just sitting in a drawer now too. Story 34. A $300 watch is fairly cheap. I thought we were talking $150,000. For the record, I don't get watch people at all. I could never imagine spending a lot on that or on sunglasses. $50 max on a watch. The same for sunglasses. I am quite rich. You don't know what I have until you see my home and passport. Otherwise, I have a regular car and nothing that is tacky with logos all over it. Story 35. It's not only jewelry, it's fascinating engineering to me. An automatic/mechanical watch is like a Rube Goldberg machine. All these cogs, springs, and rubies combine to precisely tell the time and date. This tiny Rube Goldberg machine shrunk to a small size on your wrist, able to withstand shock, able to charge itself by extracting kinetic energy from your wrist, immune to electromagnetic pulse, able to submerge deeper than most people are comfortable to dive. It's cool in a nerdy way. The first pocket watches were out in the early 1500s, so this technology is old school cool that has survived 500 years. I decided I didn't want a wedding ring, so I got a watch. I figure both are jewelry. After 15 years, my watch is also worth $2,000 more secondhand than what I paid for it new, $3,000.